Go to school, get a good job, buy a house. That's the script. You've heard it your entire life, from your parents, from your grandparents, from every cultural signal you've absorbed since you were old enough to understand what a neighborhood was. Buying a home is the finish line. It's the thing that means you made it. It's the cornerstone of the American dream, wrapped in vinyl siding, and a two-car garage, and a yard you'll spend every Saturday maintaining until you die. And if you look around at the actual humans living that dream, they are stressed. They are cash poor. They lie awake at 3 in the morning calculating whether they can cover the plumber without touching the credit card. They haven't taken a real vacation in 2 years because the water heater gave out in February and the roof is something we need to think about soon. They have a very impressive asset on paper and approximately nothing liquid in real life. Here's the thing nobody says at the closing table. The bank did not give you a 30-year mortgage because they believe in your dreams. They gave you a 30-year mortgage because it is one of the most profitable financial products ever engineered. The house builds equity slowly, over decades, in ways that mostly benefit you at the very end. The interest builds wealth for the bank immediately, every single month from day one. You didn't escape the rent trap, you just upgraded to a more expensive, less flexible version of it with better tax deductions. I want to be careful here about what I'm actually saying, because this video is going to make some people uncomfortable, and I'd rather they stay with me than tune out early. I am not telling you to never buy a home. Home ownership, under the right conditions, at the right time, in the right market, with the right financial foundation underneath it can make sense. There are legitimate reasons to own the place you live. Stability, community, the ability to paint your walls whatever color you want without asking permission. What I am telling you is this. A primary residence is not an investment. It is a lifestyle choice that happens to involve a very large amount of money. And the financial industry, the real estate industry, and roughly 40 years of cultural programming have worked very hard to blur that distinction, because the blur is worth billions of dollars to the people on the other side of the transaction. The middle class has been convinced to sink almost all of their available liquidity into drywall, square footage, and a zip code. The result is a generation of people who are technically wealthy on paper and genuinely cash poor in practice. House rich, life poor. Unable to absorb a financial shock, change careers, move cities, or take the kind of calculated risks that actually build long-term wealth, because everything they have is locked inside the walls of a property they can't sell without a realtor, a closing process, and 6 to 8 weeks minimum. That is the trap. Let's look at exactly how it works. The single most effective piece of pro-homeownership propaganda ever produced is 5 words long. Renting is throwing money away. You've heard it. You've probably said it. It feels intuitively true in a way that's hard to argue with at a dinner party. But let's actually pull it apart, because it does not survive contact with real math. When you rent a home, you are purchasing a service. That service is shelter, a roof, 4 walls, a functioning kitchen, someone else's responsibility when the pipes burst at midnight. The rent you pay is the maximum you will spend that month on housing. The landlord handles the water heater. The landlord handles the roof. The landlord handles the property tax bill that arrives twice a year. You write one check and your housing obligation for the month is complete. When you buy a home, the mortgage payment is not your housing cost. It is the floor. It is the minimum you will pay before the month starts adding things. Property taxes, several $1,000s a year in most markets, quietly baked into an escrow payment you've half forgotten about. Homeowners insurance, HOA fees if you're in a managed community, which can run anywhere from a couple hundred to several $100s a month for the privilege of having rules about your mailbox. Maintenance. The industry standard estimate is 1 to 2% of the home's value per year, which on a $400,000 house is $4,000 to $8,000 annually, just to keep the thing from deteriorating. Every single one of those costs is money that leaves your account and never comes back. It builds no equity. It produces no return. By the standard of throwing money away, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and interest are all throwing money away. We just don't call them that because they come attached to something society told us was smart. Renting gives you a ceiling on your monthly housing cost. Buying gives you a floor. That distinction matters enormously, and almost nobody talks about it honestly. Now let's talk about the part of the mortgage that the bank hopes you find too boring to examine closely. Amortization. When you take out a 30-year mortgage, your monthly payment is fixed. Same number every month for 360 months. That feels orderly and fair. What is not immediately obvious, and what the bank has no particular interest in making obvious, is how that fixed payment is divided between paying down what you actually owe and paying the bank for the privilege of borrowing the money. In the early years of a mortgage, the split is brutal. Say you borrow $400,000 at a 7% interest rate. Your monthly payment is around $2,660. In your very first payment, roughly $2,300 of that goes to interest. About $330 goes to principal, the actual debt, the number that represents your ownership stake in the property. You sent the bank $2,660. You own $30 more of house than you did last month. This is not an accident, and it is not a coincidence. It is the mathematical consequence of how amortization schedules are structured, front-loaded with interest, so that the bank collects the majority of its profit early in the loan, before most people sell, refinance, or pay off the balance. By the time you've made payments for 10 full years on a 30-year mortgage, you've paid roughly $190,000 to the bank. Your remaining balance? Still around $340,000 on a $400,000 loan. A decade of payments. $190,000 sent, and the debt moved by $60,000. You are not building equity in the early years of a mortgage, in any meaningful sense. You are servicing interest with a side effect of minor principal reduction. The bank owns the house. You own the liability. The equity comes later, much later, if you stay long enough and if the market cooperates. That is what the bank means when they call it a home loan. You are renting the money. The house is collateral. The first decade, you are mostly just paying for the rent on the loan. Let's talk about the money you put into the house before you even make a single mortgage payment. The down payment. On a $400,000 home, a 20% down payment is $80,000. That's the number you spent years saving, the number you protected carefully, kept liquid, and finally deployed toward what everyone told you was the smart move. Now let's run the alternative. You take that $80,000 and put it into a simple total market index fund. No management fees, no complexity, no spreadsheet of rotating categories. You also calculate the difference between what you would have paid monthly to rent a comparable home versus the true all-in cost of owning. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, the occasional catastrophic appliance failure. Conservatively, in most markets, that delta is somewhere around $1,000 a month. You invest that difference too, every month automatically. The morning it would have gone toward the house instead. Over 30 years at the market's historical average return of roughly 7% after inflation. The $80,000 lump sum alone grows to over $600,000. Add the monthly $1,000 contributions, and the total climbs past $1 million. Some calculations, depending on the market and the timing, push it toward $2 million. Liquid. Completely, immediately liquid. No realtor, no closing costs. No waiting for a buyer, no praying the roof holds another season. You open the account, you sell shares. The money is in your checking account in 3 business days. The house, meanwhile, might have appreciated. It might have appreciated nicely. But that appreciation is locked inside a physical structure that costs money to maintain. Costs 6% of its value to sell, and cannot be partially liquidated when you need $20,000 for something urgent. Wealth locked in bricks is not the same as wealth. It's an asset with a very complicated exit. Here's something nobody mentions at the housewarming party. The day you close on a home, your life gets significantly less flexible. Not in a small way, in a profound, decade-scale way that will quietly shape every major decision you make from that point forward. A job opportunity opens up. Different city, better title, 30% more salary. The kind of move that could genuinely change your trajectory. A renter makes a phone call, gives 30 days notice, and starts figuring out neighborhoods. A homeowner opens a spreadsheet and starts calculating current market value minus the remaining mortgage balance minus the realtor's commission, typically 5 to 6% of the sale price, which on a $400,000 house is $20,000 to $24,000, minus closing costs, minus whatever repairs the inspection flags, minus the months the house might sit on the market before an acceptable offer arrives. The opportunity might still make sense after all that math, but it is no longer a simple decision. It is a complicated, stressful, expensive decision with a multi-month timeline attached to it. And a meaningful percentage of people run that calculation and decide to stay. Not because staying is better for their life, because leaving is too hard. This is the geography prison. You do not merely own a property. The property owns your options. It determines where you can work, where your kids go to school, how quickly you can respond when life offers you something better or demands that you move. And if the neighborhood changes, the school district declines, the commercial development moves in, the thing that made the location desirable quietly reverses. You cannot simply leave. You are exposed to every local risk that a renter can walk away from with 30 days' notice. Flexibility has a dollar value that does not appear anywhere in the home purchase calculation. It should. There is a specific psychological transformation that happens somewhere between signing the closing documents and your first full month of home ownership. You will not see it coming. You start caring about the lawn. Not because you always cared about lawns, you didn't. You rented for years and walked past lawns without a second thought. But now it's your lawn, in front of your house, on your street, and something shifts. The edging is slightly uneven. The mulch in the front beds is looking thin. The fence has a section that's a little weathered. None of this affected your quality of life 12 months ago. Now it occupies mental real estate you didn't allocate for it. Welcome to the Home Depot trap. Population: every homeowner who has ever lived. The average American homeowner spends somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a year on maintenance and improvements. And that's the average, which means the enthusiastic ones are pulling that number up considerably. Not emergency repairs, discretionary spending, mulch and power washers and paint and fixtures, and the tile you didn't love and the deck that would really improve the backyard. Your Saturday used to be yours. Now it belongs to the house. You are spending your weekend hours, the finite, non-renewable hours of your actual life, working for a building. Maintaining it, improving it, protecting your investment, keeping up with the block. The house became a hobby. Hobbies are fine when you choose them. This one chose you the moment you signed the paperwork. And unlike most hobbies, this one sends you a bill every time you try to put it down. The most common defense of home ownership, the one that gets deployed when every other argument starts to wobble, is this one. My mortgage is a forced savings account. Every payment builds equity. I'm saving money whether I feel like it or not. And honestly, as a psychological hack for people who struggle to save, there's a grain of truth in there. The forced nature of it does work for some people. If the alternative is genuinely spending every dollar that doesn't get automatically redirected, then yes, a mortgage forces a behavior that produces an outcome. But let's look at the actual terms of this savings account, because they are spectacularly bad. To deposit money into the savings account, you pay 7% interest on every dollar you put in. The account is almost entirely illiquid. You cannot make a withdrawal without either selling the entire account or taking out a loan against it, which charges you additional interest for accessing your own money. The returns are not guaranteed and vary enormously depending on location, timing, and market conditions entirely outside your control. And here's the clause buried in the fine print that no one reads at the housewarming party. If you miss 3 deposits, 3 months of payments, because you lost your job, because a medical event wiped out your cash reserves, because life did what life occasionally does, the bank does not pause the account. The bank does not work with you indefinitely. The bank forecloses. They take the account. The equity you spent years building, the deposits you made faithfully for a decade, can be largely consumed by the process of losing the house. legal fees, missed payments, the forced sale at below market value. There is no savings account on earth with those terms that a rational person would voluntarily open. We accept them on a mortgage because the cultural script around homeownership is so powerful that we stopped reading the fine print somewhere around the third generation of being told this was the smart move. A forced savings account that charges you 7% to save, locks up your money for decades, and can be seized if you have a bad year is not a financial feature. It is a financial constraint dressed up in the language of wealth building. There is one argument left, the one that feels unassailable. The one that gets delivered with genuine confidence at every kitchen table conversation about renting versus buying. Rent goes up every year, but my mortgage payment stays the same. It's a good line, it's clean. It has the satisfying quality of sounding mathematically final. And the first part is true. Rent does go up, and that's a real consideration that belongs in any honest comparison. But the second part deserves a much harder look than it usually gets. Your principal and interest payment stays the same. That's accurate. That is the fixed number. The part the bank agreed to hold constant when you signed the 30-year note. Everything else is not fixed, not even close. Property taxes are reassessed regularly in most jurisdictions. In markets where home values have risen significantly, which is most markets, which is exactly why people felt good about buying. The reassessments have been aggressive. Homeowners in appreciating markets have watched their property tax bills climb hundreds of dollars a year, year after year, with no ceiling and no opt-out. Homeowners' insurance premiums have been rising sharply across the country, driven by climate-related claims, reinsurance costs, and insurers exiting certain markets entirely. In some states, finding coverage at any price has become genuinely difficult. The premium you locked in at closing is not the premium you'll pay in year 8. HOA fees, where applicable, tend to increase as the community ages and deferred maintenance comes due. The assessment you budgeted for can be joined by a special assessment, a one-time charge for a shared repair that the reserve fund didn't cover, that arrives with very little warning and no option to decline. So the floor, the minimum monthly cost of the house, keeps rising anyway. Not at the dramatic rate that a hot rental market might rise. But it rises. The fixed payment is fixed in one column of a spreadsheet that has several other columns nobody showed you when you were calculating affordability. The mortgage stays the same. The house doesn't. So here's where we land after all of that. Buying a home is not evil. It is not always wrong. If you want the stability, the permanence, the ability to renovate your kitchen and plant a garden and build roots in a community, those are legitimate human desires, and they have real value that doesn't show up in a spreadsheet. I'm not telling you those things don't matter. What I am telling you is to stop calling a house a financial cheat code. Stop treating a primary residence like it's an investment strategy. Stop letting the cultural script around homeownership pressure you into a decision that locks up your liquidity, limits your flexibility, and front-loads the bank's profit for the first decade of your loan. A house is a lifestyle purchase, an expensive, complicated, deeply personal lifestyle purchase that comes with real benefits and real costs. Go in with both eyes open. Buy it because you want the life it provides. Not because someone told you renting is throwing money away while they collected a 6% commission on your transaction. Your net worth is not the equity in your walls. It is the sum of every asset you own that can actually move, grow, and respond when your life needs it to. If this video made you think twice about the American dream script you've been handed since childhood, hit the like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. So this reaches the person who's about to drain their entire savings account into a down payment because everyone around them said it was time. If you want more financial content that skips the feel-good mythology and gets to the actual math, subscribe. That is all we do here. And leave me a comment before you go. I want to know where you land after all of this. Team rent or team buy? Tell me and tell me why. The comment section on this one is going to be interesting, and I genuinely intend to read it. Take care of yourselves. Know what you're buying before you buy it. I'll see you in the next one.